Welcome parents, carers and Year 10 students. My name is James Barringer, Deputy Head Teacher at Icknield Community College, and I'm going to present to you our top 10 tips for how Year 10 students can increase the likelihood of success over the next 20 months. Whilst this presentation is for parents and carers, I will address the students themselves as they will shoulder the biggest responsibilities going forwards. As I run through the strategies from 10 down to 1, their potential impact increases, culminating in the single most powerful tool that students can use. Let's get straight on with the countdown. Tip number 10 is to invest time establishing your goals. There are many different theories on what affects intrinsic motivation, that is, your ability to motivate yourself, but one that I certainly subscribe to suggests that we push ourselves harder when we know exactly what we're aiming for. Therefore, spending time looking at the courses or jobs that you might want to do in the next few years and, in particular, the qualifications you'll need to reach them will probably help you to push yourself harder when you're finding it difficult to keep working. Every week, Helen Richardson puts careers news in the newsletter. Check this out to help orientate your goals. You could invest more time on Unifrog or visit helpful websites like the National Careers Service website, which has so much information on a wide range of careers. Tip number 9 is to spend time improving your knowledge on subject-specific online revision and learning. Your teachers will regularly point you towards valuable websites and apps. Take the time to use them. In maths, this might mean completing a memory quiz each week in Hegarty Maths. This will test you on the questions that you have previously answered on Hegarty. In English, it might mean using genius.com to explore the connotations of the text used in An Inspector Calls or Macbeth, discovering a new or alternative perspective to your first thoughts. Speak to your teachers about the websites they would advise you to explore further. Tip number 8 is to use the Seneca website, a tool for ongoing revision which is useful in a wide range of subjects. Investing some time setting it up provides you with a set of revision resources tailored specifically to your exams. Firstly, you should set up a free account. Then, after choosing the Courses tab, you should search for the courses that you are taking. For example, by using the filters to select Geography and AQA, the exam board our students are following, the AQA GCSE Geography Seneca course can be added to your own account. Then, by going back into your courses and selecting this particular course, the revision can begin. To exemplify, you can select a particular aspect of the course you've studied, for example, the Nepal earthquake of 2015. It might be that as you read, you choose to make additional revision notes to help you to retain the knowledge. Reading itself is a relatively passive activity that doesn't force your brain to think. The key to adding knowledge to your long-term memory. After every few slides, there's a short activity to test your knowledge. Answering questions about what you've read is another excellent way of moving the knowledge into your long-term memory. If you can find a friend or a family member to quiz you on what you've learned, it will help you in the long run. Tip number 7 is to use BBC Bitesize. This website has been around for years. I'm sure you'll have used it many times before, but it is really good at giving you the basics for the topic you are studying. For that reason, it's an excellent tool for pre-learning a topic that you have not yet studied. By reading the summaries, watching the videos and taking the tests, you can build up and test your knowledge. It doesn't store your scores, but there's no harm in repeating any of these tests over and over. It will help you to retain that knowledge if you do so. Tip number 6 is to take the time to stop and reflect on the way you're approaching all aspects of your work. This quote from a favourite children's novel neatly encapsulates a problem we can all find ourselves in from time to time. I'll give you a moment to read it. You receive your Attitude to Learn scores, you will receive predicted grades, but do you ask yourself what you're going to do differently to make positive changes? We all learn most effectively in a range of different ways. Whilst applying a mixture of study techniques is a sensible approach for everyone, trying to identify the techniques and approaches that work best for you whilst in Year 10 will enable you to maximise the effect of your studying in the last parts of the course. To enable this, you might assign yourself different approaches to different subjects so you can see what works for you. Perhaps you'll make mind maps in science, but focus more on exam practice in PE. By looking on the exam board website, as you can see here, you'll be able to find lots of past papers and their mark schemes to practice. Later in the year, if you've used a range of different techniques, you could evaluate which approaches have helped you most. Tip number 5 is that teaching is one of the best ways you can learn and retain anything. When you teach something to someone else, you're forced to develop your understanding of the material as you consider the best way to explain it. You're also likely to be questioned by that person, which takes your understanding even further and makes it more likely to remain in your long-term memory. The great news is you have all the tools you need to teach others. You have your own mini whiteboard and pen. You have the notes in your book and your recall from your lessons. If you want to improve your retention, teach your parents the concepts that you've studied in class, especially the hard ones that you need to work a bit harder to fully grasp. If not your parents, why not do so with a friend? If you found a concept difficult, find a peer that grasped it more quickly and ask them to help you. Perhaps you could reciprocate, teaching them something that they didn't get as quickly. However you do it, even if it is to the teddy bear in your room, teaching someone else will help you to remember things. Tip number 4 is to maximise your use of GCSEPod. This company has been around for a few years now, and they think, from the evidence that they've gathered, that students who regularly engage with GCSEPod can improve their final outcomes by 1 grade in each subject. You can use the platform's 3-minute videos to pre-learn topics that are coming up in class, and the check and challenge function is a fantastic way of consolidating what you've already learned. To maximise the effectiveness of the time you spend revising, use the Boost playlists to focus specifically on the areas you're finding more difficult. We're now getting up to the big hitters. Tip 3 is to review your learning each week. This requires no resources, no phones, no internet, just your brain and a few minutes, and it's one of the most powerful things you can do. After you've been introduced to a new concept, thinking about it again will strengthen the connections in your brain and make it more likely to be stored in your longer-term memory. The more times you think about it and apply it, the more you are likely to remember it. Teachers have known this for years. That's why we ask students so many questions about things you've studied before. But you can make this process more efficient by scheduling in a weekly review. What you need to do is choose a day, perhaps last Monday, and take 1 lesson at a time. Firstly, try to remember what the lesson was about. Then push yourself further to recall the most important concepts, the new facts that you were taught, the most important subject-specific vocabulary, and the things that you found most difficult in the lesson. At this stage, you shouldn't use a book or a resource at all to be most effective, because remember, thinking is far better than reading when it comes to improving your memory. Only when you decide you can't recall everything you need should you turn to your books to refresh your memory. By taking this approach for every lesson across that Monday, perhaps investing 3 to 5 minutes for each class, you'll make a massive difference. There are many options here for how you apply this learning tool. You might use it every day to review your learning from 1 week previous. That is, on a Monday evening, review the previous Monday. You might do it once a week on a Saturday and review the whole previous week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday's learning. You could challenge yourself further, of course, by trying to review the week before last. Clearly that's going to be a lot harder, but the benefits, if you can remember that, are going to be better for you. Many students I've worked with have chosen to note down their summaries each week. This provides you with the added bonus of revision summary notes that span the entirety of your courses. By periodically reviewing these notes, you can test your own retention and target the areas you're struggling to retain, perhaps using Seneca GCSEPod or one of the other revision tools we've already discussed. To reiterate, the options here are numerous. Just make sure you do not disadvantage yourself by not applying this massively powerful learning tool. Tip number 2 is to make the very most of the Master Revision Guide. The massive advantage of this resource over all others is that it's been designed by your teachers to support the learning you have covered in your lessons. You will have seen Dr. Legg's video, which is linked to this QR code should you wish to remind yourself of its messages, and have spent time in school learning to navigate the Microsoft OneNote software. Now is the time to make sustainable, ongoing use of this learning tool that, like GCSEPod, can add significantly to your grades. Having personalised your version of the Master Revision Guide, use the subject checklists to regularly rate your retention of the units you've studied. Then, taking a strategic approach to choosing your priorities, use the resources on offer to improve your knowledge and retention. You might want to invest in the revision guides suggested by your teachers here, particularly as they've referenced specifically the pages that link to each aspect of the course. If not, use the internet links to revise the topics and to test your knowledge. If you do take a test, you might record your score and update your RAG rating. Remember also, the RAGs only ever refer to your retention at the time you complete them. Just because something is green does not mean it's green forever. By reviewing the learning across your course regularly, you'll be recalling topics and helping to move that knowledge into your long-term memory. As you move towards the end of the courses, you'll then find that your revision can be utterly strategic, focusing on the most challenging topics, as large parts of your courses will be secure in your mind. By following tips 10 to 2 collectively, alongside making sure that you finish any incomplete classwork from any lessons and take opportunities to explore further concepts you study in different contexts, you would be maximising your attitude to learning beyond lessons. This will have a massive impact on your future grades, but in my view, still falls way behind tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to make the very best use of every lesson, every day between now and the end of the course. Across the GCSE, you'll sit in approximately 350 science lessons, 280 maths lessons, 280 English lessons, and so on and so forth. In each one, you need to listen actively to your teachers and your peers as they discuss the concepts you're studying. This means thinking about what you hear, reflecting on whether you understand it and considering how it relates to things that you already know. You also need to think carefully about what success looks like in each of the tasks that you're asked to complete, making sure you concentrate on achieving that success. We retain more about the things that we really think about. Completing your work whilst chatting to a friend will mean it's highly unlikely you'll remember anything you studied, but more likely that you'll remember the conversation that you had. In truth, you may as well have not completed the task at all, as you won't have learnt anything from it. Instead, make sure that you focus on the work that you're completing and focus on the excellence of it and making sure that it meets that success criteria. At the end of the lesson, assess whether you've achieved the learning objectives that the teacher shared with you. If you have done and you're able to retain what you've learned, you will be successful in the long term. You also need to recognise that you learn by tackling challenging tasks. Wherever possible, take on the tasks that challenge you to think hardest. When the tasks get hard, don't give up. We often learn the most when we're having to really think and, quite possibly, make a few mistakes. If you need to, increase the level of challenge yourself. For example, by not allowing yourself to look back at previous notes to help you to complete a task, or by trying to introduce additional new vocabulary into all of your written work. You can always talk to your teacher about strategies that you can do to make the work more challenging. That relationship with your teachers is crucial to all of this. Make sure you ask them questions when you're unsure of concepts, or think you might be making a mistake, and also try to answer their questions in class discussions. By actively involving yourself in class dialogue, listening and contributing, you will test and improve your own understanding and consider other people's perspectives. This will provide you with the skills to apply your knowledge to slightly different contexts, the precise challenge that the GCSE exam boards will be setting for you in the near future. Also, by grappling with the feedback the teacher gives to your and other students' answers in class, you can assess your own understanding of the topic, ensuring that you're on track to achieve your objectives. You'll hopefully agree that all of this is achievable for you in each of your lessons and will, I promise, make the biggest difference to your future if you make these habits a reality. So, parents and carers, there we have it, our top 10 tips to maximising success in one short video. As educators, we've produced this guidance having learned from many experiences with many students. We love little more than seeing our students achieve success. So I ask you to, please, reflect on this advice. Please talk about it with your children, making plans together about how you can support them to form really good habits over the next 2 years. And, most important of all, please encourage your children to act upon it. If you want to look back and re-watch any of the tips in this presentation, they're each individually linked in the description beneath this YouTube presentation. Thank you very much for listening and watching.